Well, that is a damn quick way for us to go down to four competitors. Really, if you look at things, we had about a week period from like about day 40 to 46 where we lost three competitors, including two that tapped out tonight. I think we ended on day 46. So, really, this entire episode only covered like 4 days of this experience and had two tap outs at this stage in the game. That is very surprising to me to have those tap outs occur in such a short span. So now we're at the end of tonight's episode at I believe we ended on day 46. 4 people left, and it's going to get very, very interesting from this point out, because with this few people left at really a fairly early day, anyone can win this thing now, because there's just a lot of time for a simple mistake to take any of our final four out. All right, enough of my yammering. Let's get into tonight's episode. We're going to start with our two tap outs, of course, and then we'll just jump through the other four competitors who will be our final four of the season. So first off, I think we all saw this coming, and that is Tom. Last week he hurt his back, and he obviously he's still hurting from the back, and almost immediately falls again, and he is done. He is tapped out. Overall, I really enjoyed Tom. I thought he had a very good and very interesting shelter. Really loved that fireplace. If you remember, the little fungus lamp that he made was also pretty cool. Overall, I think he caught or killed like over 40 animals throughout the season, which is pretty incredible. And honestly, I don't know if how many contestants we've had over the seasons that have been as successful at hunting and fishing as Tom was. Now, in the end, that wasn't enough to keep him in. You get injured, and you're done. So he hurt his back, also hurt his knee on his final fall, and he is done for the season. Next up, let's jump over to Jessie. And shockingly, the start of this episode, she's still working on that shelter. The Hodgepodge Lodge is the shelter that will never end. And I think in hindsight, Jessie is going to regret how much tunnel vision she had on her shelter and how much she neglected going and getting food for herself. At this point, she's down 45 pounds, and it kind of seems to be one of the trends of the season that if you see on the screen how much weight someone has lost, that means that they are about to tap out. Really rough episode for Jessie. She can't even keep water down, and I honestly don't know how she managed to survive 40 days with how little food she took in and how much work she put into that shelter. An incredible just test of will for her to have stayed out here 45 days, and her absolute refusal to quit, her refusal to tap out was maybe a little bit too far considering what condition she ended the season with. We got some pretty gross shots of her vomiting, near vomiting, and she must have absolutely been slamming her water because the amount of water that she threw up was pretty staggering. Like to just contrast this a little bit with Juan Pablo this episode. He was starting to feel some issues with his stomach, and instead of forcing himself to eat or drink a bunch of water, he just avoided it and was waiting for his stomach to settle down first, while Jessie, on the other hand, she just forced it down, and we all saw, the end result. So the final straw for Jessie was she failed to confirm her medical check. So immediately the rescue crew was dispatched, and of course they pulled her from the competition. You know, when the rescue or medical crew comes out and the contestant can't even get up to meet them, just can't even get out of the sleeping bag, that's usually a pretty good sign that it's all over for them. Jessie, just a message to you. This was absolutely not you quitting. You starved alone in Labrador for 44 days and absolutely refused to tap. So in no way, shape, or form should you view this as quitting. Let's move on to our final four. First up, I want to start with Karie Lee. She's been an interesting person that I really wish we had seen more of to this point. You know, a lot of her episodes, you know, she just kind of pops up for an episode or two and that's it. But I really do get a kick out of her and enjoy seeing her on the screen. You know, she started tonight's episode with making some homemade toothpaste, transitioned that into bow fishing for muskrat. You ended up singing us a song at one point, and a note to all the contestants and future contestants: please stop making songs for us. You know, that might be a way to combat the loneliness, but really we don't need it. We just don't need it. My ears can only handle so much. But back to the muskrats. Karie Lee does take down a muskrat, and I'm interested to see how this works out for her. But because we saw what happened to the Beaver Boys, will the muskrat maiden turn out any different, or will she have a similar fate to the Beaver Boys? We also got Karie Lee doing a ridiculous Halloween skit, and she wasn't the only person to do that this week. It kind of had our little moment of improv live in Labrador. Let's jump over to our other person who had a skit this week, and that was Adam. And you know, I think I got to give Adam the edge in his performance for his Halloween skit, because his was just a little bit more ridiculous than what we got from Karie Lee. Also, you know, I think he wins Best Dress for his grouse costume, you know, even if it maybe looked a little bit like a ptarmigan. But back to the actual surviving. Adam is making more use of the driftwood that he found, nails and all, making some shutters for his windows to help keep the cold out now that winter is slowly starting to creep in. I was wondering for a long time what was going to happen with his big open window that he had in his shelter once we actually started to see a little bit of cold, and now we know. Adam started feeling a little homesick, which is a concern. You know, I feel like if he knew that there was only 3 other people left, that he'd be a little more determined to stick this out until the end. But now that he's getting homesick, it's only day 45. That is a little bit worrisome for me. After his little, you know, having his thoughts of tapping and deciding to carry on, he goes exploring and finds an entire new river in his area. I feel like we're pretty late in the game for him to be discovering new bodies of water on his area, but while he's there, he spots and shoots a hare and got himself a pretty nice little meal for the episode. Teimojin, we didn't really get to see a ton from him this episode. You know, he starts out, he already has a squirrel. We didn't even see it. He's already got a squirrel. Turns around, walks like 20 feet, and gets himself a grouse. looks like he's doing quite well for himself, and also like hearing him talk about his family and also doing the smudging on Halloween. I just enjoyed seeing that, a little bit of personality from our contestants, because it shouldn't just exclusively be survival. I want to get to know these people a little bit on the way. Last up, we have Juan Pablo, and he is, or at least it seems like, the only person who is still focusing on fishing. He had built that dock previously and decides today to extend that dock out a little further, and it immediately pays off with 3 small trout coming in for Juan Pablo. Unfortunately, he started feeling not great at the end of the episode, cooked up all his trout, and decided to not eat any of it because he wasn't hungry and was concerned that if he did end up eating the fish, that he'd end up just throwing it up and wasting it. So that wraps things up tonight for episode 8. Very, very excited to see how the end of the season plays out. Not sure how many episodes we have left, but only being on day 46, down to 4 people, things are going to get very, very interesting. And I'm very excited to see how it all plays out. So as always, everybody, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, we'll see you later.